How about now?
Awesome. Yeah, it's perfect. Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
So the first question I have for you is, again, right into it. You start out your career 10-0, you become this very highly touted prospect. And then over the last two fights, haven't gone your way. Not really your fault, to be honest. What did you learn about yourself over these last two fights? Because I'm sure it's a lot easier when you're just winning and, everybody's on your side.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, having a no contest and then having a draw, both kind of underwhelming in the results atmosphere. I mean, like, you obviously you want something a little bit more. Hold on. Dogs can't seem to agree. Yeah, I mean, you want something a little bit more conclusive, something more to build on. But no, if I learned anything, it's one that I belong in the cage with the best fighters in the world, and the content of the fight itself is indicative that my growth as a fighter is still happening. Sometimes the learning curve is a little bit sharper than at other times, but no matter what, I'm just grateful to be here, grateful to do what I love for a living, grateful to be growing and learning still, getting better.
And so what were your takeaways from that last fight? Did you think you deserved to have your hand raised?
No, to be honest with you, I felt like a draw was appropriate. I think he won the first and the third, but I think I deserved a 10-8 in the second.
And so how exactly did that all play out? Why was it not just a Moldavsky, like an immediate rematch instead of like fighting him?
Yeah, we initially Bellator had indicated that was the way forward back, whatever in November-ish. That was the next conversation I had with them. And it had looked that way. And then right around that time, Fedor had announced that he was going to do one more. So it just turned into a thing where it was like the deck got shuffled, like the priorities changed. And I mean, if you're gonna have Fedor ride out for one last card or one last fight, it makes sense that it was gonna shake out. It did. But no, like I said, I was looking forward to the immediate rematch. I was looking forward to getting back in there, mixing it up, getting to a conclusive result. But wasn't how it happened.
Did any part of you or, any part of your team tell you like just kind of want to wait because it just seemed like really risky to fight a guy who's very talented, but also like not ranked at the time?
No, it was the general consensus, especially amongst my coaches and my training partners, is just fight, just fight. Offer you a fight, say yes, and let the chips fall. And Aliasayev, even though he didn't have a foothold in Bellator yet, I was looking forward to testing my mettle against a former world champion, somebody who accomplished a lot in a really short amount of time, somebody who's an elite athlete, somebody who's an elite competitor. So like I said, is really for me was a big opportunity to prove myself, even though it might not have looked that way from the public eye.
And so it's been about 6 months since that fight. Was there anything that you're really prioritizing in training, or was it just, sharpening those tools, getting ready to get back in there?
Yeah, I brought on a jiu-jitsu coach. He's just so happens to be my brother-in-law. I actually knew him as my brother-in-law before I knew him in the jiu-jitsu sphere, but his name's AJ Souza. He's one of the most accomplished American jiu-jitsu practitioners in the sport. He himself had kind of transitioned away from the competitive space and had been, more focused on just doing it as a hobby. He ended up getting a real job. But no, after my last fight, I felt like I'd kind of like rested on my laurels, as it were, in terms of my skill. And I'd been feeling like that for a little while, but my last fight was enough of a wake-up call for me that it made me stop and go, you know what, it's time to swallow my pride, get with somebody who's probably a better technician than me, probably somebody who's better skill-wise, and just have them, help me out, sharpen up my skill set. And I really feel like it was as enlightening for me as it was reinvigorating for him to kind of get together. I wanted to get with somebody that was really good, that had a lot of material to show and teach. And I think, not to hype myself up too much, but I think he was excited to get with somebody who was excited to learn and excited to get better, to put new tools on their tool belt, as it were. And I think, just in a very short amount of time that we've been working together, I feel like we've really gotten off to a great start.
And the fact that I'm family, I'm sure it's nice to just have another person around you that you can trust.
Yeah, and I mean, he not just trust, but also kind of act as an intermediary between me and the rest of the family. Can kind of, hey, he's got some things going on, guys. Let's just try to, somebody else who understands. And I mean, I can appreciate that, like, by and large, especially my wife's side, they're not competitors or athletes or anything like that. So it's nice to have somebody like him who can kind of be a go-between and fully flesh out the concerns that and communicate the mindset that I might be in, even though I can't properly communicate it myself.
And so it's been like about a year since that first fight happened. Are you pretty much carrying that same game plan, or has a lot changed with what your preparations for Moldavsky since the first fight?
A lot's changed. Not just my game plan, but my approach, and my process is a lot more refined now. And I kind of learned. Like you said, it'll be 364 days, so just shy of a year between the two competitions. And one thing I've kind of had to take a step back and look at myself and acknowledge is that I'm not 23 years old anymore. I can't train the way I used to. I can't have the same lifestyle that I used to. So over the last, I would say, year and a half or a year, I really had to take a step back and refine some things. Had to tighten some things up. Had to change my diet, my sleeping habits, my training habits. And I feel like it's all for the better. I feel like the worst me of right now could be the best me of 2 years ago, but it didn't come from like an overnight change. It came from months and months and months of having to, refine the process, but also just be more honest with myself.
Yeah. And I'm sure that goes both ways. Cause it's like, it's so awesome to see how much you've grown, but at the same time, it's like a little scary looking back, like, wow, like to think who I thought I was back then compared to now must be crazy.
Oh, for sure. And I think, I sometimes look back and I'm like, man, how did I do that? I was able to, I think back to a time when, even as recently as 5 years ago, I worked at a bar at night to pay the bills, and then I would go and train sometimes twice a day. And to think that, I was pretty responsible, and it wasn't like that every day, but there was definitely days where I had to push it, had to get up and grind it out. And even now looking back, I'm like, man, I must have really been on some other I don't know what was going on.
Is there any stories about, some guy just too drunk and you're like, all right, I'm settling this right now. Let me take care of this guy.
Maybe not quite like that, but there were definitely times when I'd be like, man, they do not pay me enough to be here dealing with drunk people when I fight the best people in the world.
Yeah. And so I know that Bellator, they don't really tend to make promises or, oh, if you win this, you get this. But has anyone told you this is a number one contender fight, or in your mind, is this a number one contender fight?
No, it's even if it were, it ultimately for me is just an opportunity to do something special. And that's what it's always been. It's what it's always probably going to be. Don't get me wrong, I would happily jump at the shot for a title if with a victory here. But that said, no, I'm really just focused on the competition.
Yeah. And, if you don't, I know you're not looking past him or anything like that, but just in general, what are your thoughts on Ryan Bader and what makes him beatable outside of the fact that you have the skills to beat anyone?
Yeah. Ryan Bader is obviously a very gifted athlete, very strong competitor. He's a dude that maybe his strongest asset is his competition experience. From the time that he started till now, he's pretty much shared the cage with, just about every notable name that is conceivable for him to have competed against. And then even a couple of other names that it's like, oh, wow, you ended up fighting him too. That's what I would say is the number one thing. And like I said, this not to take away from his incredible wrestling acumen or his boxing that he kind of grew into. It's just that his experience and his ability to compete well, really is something pretty incredible.
And so last question I have for you, Moldavsky rematch. Is this one going the distance, or can the judges take this one off?
All I'm gonna say is when it's over, everyone's gonna stop and look back and say that was maybe the most magnificent, measured, thoughtful approach to a fight I've had so far. Lord
Awesome.
willing.
I cannot wait to see your fight, man. I hope for all the best for you, and I really do appreciate your time today.
Awesome, man. It's good to talk to you, Jake.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.